What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Indonesian horror film review. Actually, this is the first theatrical horror film that I'll be reviewing. So far, I've only reviewed the documentary on Shudder called Susanna, Queen of Black Magic. Well, I've decided to review two films in this video because I don't want multiple videos that have similar titles. I don't want people to think, oh, I think I've watched that video. So today I'm going to review the original film, The Queen of Black Magic, which starred Susanna, and the 2019 film, which may or may not be a remake. We'll discuss that in a moment. The bulk of the time will probably be towards the first classic film starring Susanna. Yes, this is one of her sort of breakthrough horror roles, and that's why Severin and Shudder decided to name that documentary Susanna, the Queen of Black Magic. That became sort of her nickname, much the same way that Mr. Vampire became Lam Ching-ying's nickname based on his success in the Mr. Vampire movies. And he was in some other horror movies like The Dead and the Deadly before Mr. Vampire, just like Susanna was in some other horror movies, a few at least, before The Queen of Black Magic came out in 1981. But it was that film that sort of gave her her nickname and sort of her trademark look. She does the kind of the evil stare in this one quite effectively. I rewatched it for the second time, the 81 film, the other night, and it really is a pretty solid horror film all around. And then in 2019, Kimo Stambal directed a film called Queen of Black Magic, which was written by Joko Anwar, who gave quite a bit of commentary to the documentary. He was a huge fan of Susanna. That film has a much different plot. There is some similarities, including a character named Myrnie, which is the name of Susanna's character in The Queen of Black Magic. I have to say, this film starts out, it really does captivate you, especially if you've never seen one of these before. And the way they do the exposition in the beginning is very clever. Because okay, so there's a wedding going on. There's people wearing different costumes and masks, and it's kind of a different vibe than we're used to here in the West, or even if you've seen other films that have taken place in other Asian countries. And you see several women getting the food ready and everything, and in comes this guy named Kohar, and he seems to be a well-to-do guy. He's got guys carrying him on a platform with a chair on it, There's the character of Myrnie, played by Susanna, is kind of like looking out into space. She's not really paying attention, and someone says, "What's wrong with you?" And she says, "I don't feel well." So they say, "Go lay down." And then another one of the women preparing the food looks down, and the big bowl of rice or something is full of maggots, and they all freak out. So then, as Kohar is being paraded into town, and there's this festive atmosphere, there's a couple guys who figure prominently throughout the film. They're like bystanders to like almost everything that happens in the film. They're just making small talk, and they're like, "Wow, that Kohar, he's something. He's a handsome guy. He's a smooth talker." And yeah, it's too bad for Myrnie that he decided he was going to marry somebody else, because she's really heartbroken over this, And so it's pretty clever the way they just lay in this backstory, this exposition like that. And this is all in the first 7 or 8 minutes, and you kind of get like the whole visual flair. And these two guys also talk about bad luck and omens and shamanism, and they mention that there's a shaman standing by to sort of bless the events and everything. And then what happens is a wind kicks up, and someone says, "Oh, is this going to be a bad omen?" or something like that. And people are carrying different kind of like displays and things for the wedding, and flowers, floral arrangements, and they start to get blown over. And people seem to think that this is bad luck. And then the bride-to-be kind of loses her mind, over the next couple days, and this guy Kohar decides he's going to blame Susanna. Later we learn that there's a backstory between Kohar and Susanna, that they were an item, and that he really took advantage of her. This is a very conservative country. Certain things are saved for marriage, but he persuaded her to not wait for marriage, and she did not feel right about it, and then he sort of discarded her. So he decides he's going to blame her, and this guy is a jerk. Now, in the documentary, The Queen of Black Magic, they talked about some of the class differences in Indonesia and how some people really identified with some of the horror films, because it was in the horror films that people got revenge on the upper classes and the wealthy, and people who got away committing crimes that the rest of them couldn't commit. So this guy, he's a jerk. He whips everybody up into a frenzy. They basically bust in, grab Susanna. They take her, they knock her mom down to the ground. Her house catches on fire. They take her up to the top of a cliff and they decide to throw her off. Well, she's actually caught by a mysterious figure who's yet another shaman. This is the third one you're introduced to, played by W.D. Mokhtar, who seems to have been his niche in these films. It literally catches her, okay, after they throw her down the cliff, and her fall is broken a little bit on the way down. Nurses her back to health and says that you've got to get your revenge, and the only way you can do this is through black magic, which she agrees. So she comes back and starts to get revenge. Now it's interesting because at one point, these two guys who we've already been introduced to and who were aware of what happened, they see her and they instantly check to see if they could see her feet because they think she's a ghost. So there's another movie called The Sundelbarong where she plays a ghost. But she never died. She's just now practicing black magic. So a lot of the villagers seem to think that she's a ghost, and then it really kind of freaks them out. There she is in the daytime. They could see her feet. She's walking around. So she starts to get her revenge. The first guy, she gets revenge. She opens her hand, and there's a few bees, and she blows them, and all of a sudden there's a swarm, and that takes care of him. The second guy that she gets revenge on erupts into boils. His skin starts bubbling and popping, and the effects are pretty good. Another guy is working in the fields, and she sees him, and she kind of, whatever happens to her will happen to this guy. So she kind of corkscrews herself into the ground, and then he does the same thing, except he's in a rice paddy, with knee-deep water. So when they fish him out, he's all full of worms. And kudos to the actor because it looked like some of them were in his mouth, but these were large worms. And they do kind of like they did in the Italian cannibal films where the camera just sits there and lets you take it all in for about 30 seconds, So she continues to get her revenge. She does have a confrontation with Kohar. He survives the initial confrontation. Eventually, a mysterious stranger kind of wanders in and they sort of meet up while she's washing her clothes. And, a lot of these films, they kind of do a little flirty thing where there's some partial nudity, but there's something in the foreground which blocks it. And, I think some of this was supposed to be a little tantalizing for the time. It's rather tame for today. But he gets her clothes back. She introduces herself with a different name. He says, what his name is. He meets a few of the villagers at one point. He says, hey, what's this place for? And I don't know the name for it. It wasn't a mosque, but it was, I guess, like a community center. And somebody says, well, nobody uses it because the villagers here, they don't pray. Well, what happens is the local headman, by the way, the bride-to-be, the one that went crazy, was the headman's daughter. So the headman says to Johar, enough of this, because the mom survives. She's burned. She comes back, and Kohar assaults the mom. And the headman's like, dude, enough, with you and your mob violence. So then he kind of finds religion again. All of a sudden, people are praying again. So the sorcerer, the wizard, shaman that's been teaching Susanna all this black magic, doesn't really like that. He wants people to be, he doesn't want people worshiping and being faithful. So you start to sort of doubt his intentions. At some point, she starts to say, hey, some of the people were just followers, She starts to lessen her desire for revenge on every single person. She says, some of them were just followers. And he's like, oh, you got to get revenge. And then something happens about 2/3 of the way through with Kohar that narratively is a little odd. And then the subplot about the stranger wandering into town sort of takes over a little bit for the last third. I think some people might find that narratively strange, but, I really didn't mind it. There is at least one more very gory scene where someone removes their own head and it's on the ground. And there's some other scenes where people are lifted up by mysterious forces and slammed into the ground. A lot of the effects are pretty good. And ultimately, it's kind of a story of sort of redemption and how much you want vengeance to take over your sort of heart. And I think maybe some people might think that the ending kind of comes out of left field a little bit too much, but it's a pretty fun ride. It's an interesting look into a whole different belief system, and Susanna is fantastic. She's got the look. She's absolutely gorgeous. She is. But when she just kind of like glides by a window and stares at you, and you think that you were part of a mob, and you think she's dead. You get it. Like, she's scary. You can see why people are like terrified. And this is like a remote village, so on dark and stormy nights, there's a lot of atmosphere in this movie. Yeah, this is a classic of Indonesian horror cinema. Certainly, if you're a Susanna fan, this is a good place to start, even though it may not have been her very first one. Highly recommend it. I believe that it has a Mondo Macabre release. I just watched this the other night. This is a later Susanna movie, The Hungry Snake Woman. So it looks like Mondo Macabre might be your place to go for Blu-rays of some Susanna movies. In the meantime, you've got Shudder, and then you've also got some on Amazon. So Shudder and Amazon seem to be the places to watch. Okay, so before I get to The Queen of Black Magic from 2019, while I'm making this video, I actually got a comment on my Susanna Queen of Black Magic documentary review from, this is actually really cool, Eki Imanjaya, who was a producer on the documentary. He's also a film composer. And he basically said, "Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate it. The film is also available on Netflix in particular regions." Yes, as always, check justwatch.com. It'll show you where it's streaming. And I hope you guys in other countries also have justwatch.com. That's my resource to find out where things are streaming. As far as physical releases, another reminder, speaking of Severin, they had the All the Haunts BRs box sets. The second one has that documentary, Susanna, the Queen of Black Magic, and the film Sundelborong. So I'm hoping maybe Severin puts out some of the rest of these films, Ni Blorong and the Queen of Black Magic, and some other films out individually or in a box set as well. So that's really cool to get a quote from Eki. So go ahead and, I looked at his channel. He had a video a month ago. I'm going to look it up right now because I don't remember how to pronounce it. Video essay, What Makes a Film a Pokang Film? So I have no idea what that is. There's dozens of films in Indonesia with that word in the title. So I'm very interested in finding out and learning some more. So awesome that he commented on my video. I appreciate it. And the purpose of this is to bring some awareness to some films that some people have not seen or heard of yet. So anyway, let's go. Let's get to the review of The Queen of Black Magic from 2019. This one has a plot that pretty much could have been set anywhere. You have 3 friends who have graduated a while back from an orphanage, okay? They are going back there with their families. In one case, you have a guy that has 2 teenagers. The other 2 are just couples. So 3 guys and their wives, and the one guy has a couple kids. They're going back to this orphanage because the proprietor, an elderly man, is very ill. So they're going back to sort of pay their respects. And it's out in the middle of the country. On the way there, they do find a dead animal by the side of the road, which maybe is, a little bit of foreshadowing there. When they get there, you meet a younger couple who are also graduates from the orphanage who now work there. The woman, unfortunately, suffered some kind of an accident, and her face has been disfigured. And some of the family members, the visitors, start to see and hear strange things. And we also learned about a woman named Myrnie, which is the name that Susanna had in the 1981 Queen of Black Magic, who used to work there, who was there when something horrible happened. And we start to learn that there was some abuse in this orphanage. And they also say, well, where are the kids? Well, the kids are out on a trip. So you see a van full of kids out in the countryside. So where are the kids? When are they coming back? Who was the mysterious woman? What kind of abuse went on at this orphanage? It sort of all comes together at the end, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say. Now, apart from the title and from the fact that one of the characters' name is Myrnie, that's about all this film has in common with the original Queen of Black Magic. I would say this is much more of an homage to the original film, and it's sort of a tribute to Susanna. And in fact, at the end, they show a few quick scenes from the first movie. And I believe they say something on screen about Susanna. So kind of the same way as I discussed that the film Rigor Mortis, which was a film made in Hong Kong about ghosts and vampires and various supernatural entities in an apartment building, was a serious film, but it kind of paid tribute to many of the Mr. Vampire films and other films from Hong Kong about ghosts. So it's a nice homage to the Queen of Black Magic, but a very different type of plot. more of a conventional story, but well done and well told. Some pretty good creepy scenes out in the countryside, and overall a nice feeling of foreboding and dread that escalates as it goes. So pretty good film. So there you go, guys. That is my review of. I recommend both of these: The Queen of Black Magic from 1981, starring the legendary Susanna, and The Queen of Black Magic from 2019. So go ahead and check both of these out, and let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. And I'm going to try to get back and do at least 1 or 2 more Indonesian horror reviews before the end of October, if I can. Thanks a lot. Later.